I kind of want people to know what sarcoma is, and if you do have something that doesn't look or feel right, like especially men, like don't be that whole kind of blasé, oh she'll be right. Like I've been saying that for a long time and it's not all right. My name's Matt King and this is my journey. I'm originally from Queenstown, New Zealand. Grew up in the hospitality industry. Mother was a hotel manager, so that was hospitality was my life for a little bit. And after I left school, I became a whitewater raft guide, and adventure tourism was me, and loved skiing. Skiing was my passion. Lived and breathed it. Thought I was going to be a ski bum for my entire life. And some circumstances led me to having to move to Perth. So it was a bit of an adjustment for me moving here, but it's been life-changing in more ways than one, and I've made Perth my home now, and I've been here just over 18 years, and it's, to be honest, I'm not sure I could live anywhere else at the moment. I do enjoy it here, and who I've become and what things I've achieved since being here. Going from wanting to be a ski bum to a diesel mechanic has been a pretty big leap, but I have always enjoyed fixing things, seeing how they worked. I can remember from being a small child wanting to pull things apart to have a look inside them. I wasn't content with what they did from the outside. I wanted to see how the insides worked and how they did that. And after moving to Western Australia, I had a job in construction, and it was a good job. Really enjoyed it, but it just wasn't enough for me. And when I was 30, so late to the game, decided that I wanted to be a diesel mechanic and set my eyes on that goal and achieved it, and there's been no looking back since. It was some time ago now, after living in Perth, might have been 8 years by then I think, and I was bored on the weekends. I didn't really know kind of what to do, and growing up, being a skier, I loved that adrenaline from skiing, and I was thinking, I wonder what there is in Perth that can fill that gap, and didn't realise that there's actually quite a fair bit of mountain biking that goes on here. So had a look into it and decided to buy a cheap mountain bike and give it a crack, and pretty much from that first day of not riding a bike really for a number of years, probably since I was a kid, I fell in love, and there was no turning back. Being out on the bike, it gives me a sense of freedom, of just being out in the environment, and gives me a time to clear my head and kind of reset really. And I've always been fairly active and physical throughout my life, so there's that side of it as well that I really love. So after getting hooked on mountain biking, it was my thing. Loved it. Used to race enduros quite frequently, and would try and get out on the bike 2 to 3 times a week, and it was my thing. I loved it. I was right in my element and got super addicted to it, and thought, how can I ride a bike more often? So then ended up buying a road bike. Got talked into racing a crit race, which is a criterium. And basically what that is it's a 4-corner circuit on a road, generally in an industrial area, and it's a hard and fast race. It's a short period of time, can be 30 minutes to 60 minutes, big group of people and it's all out and it's pretty intense. There's some pretty big crashes and I was hooked. This was my thing, and so I started training and riding as much as I could. The mountain bike kind of ended up gathering a bit of dust, and riding the road bike was me. And then gravel biking kind of became a thing, which is essentially a road bike with bigger tyres that you ride off-road, which I totally got that, and it was kind of bringing mountain biking back to where it began, and I loved that. And it was more of a, I think there was more freedom in riding a gravel bike, because there's been often times where I was riding my road bike and I'd see a road, a dirt road, and you'd kind of look up there and go, I wonder where that goes. And with a gravel bike, you can just head off in that direction and see where it goes. And there's quite a big gravel race here called Seven, which is down in Nannup, and that race has become a qualifier to race in the Gravel World Championships. And once that was kind of announced, I'm like, here we go, here is the next big thing. So I had my heart and goals set on this race. So training a fair amount, and it was all about qualifying for that race. And I did qualify for it, and I had a bit of a hard time, I'm going to admit. It didn't go as well as I would have liked, but I did manage to do enough to qualify, so I was pretty happy with that. But at the end of that race, I was a little bit burnt out from working a lot and training a lot and just being solely focused on qualifying. And then now that I qualified, going over to Italy and racing in that race. And I needed some time off the bike to kind of reset a little bit. And in that time, I'd had these niggling injuries, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna need to have some time off, and hopefully these niggling injuries that I've got will get better before I can go into another big block of training ready for the race. But things didn't quite work out that way, and I ended up getting ill. I had like a cold 1 week, and then it kind of followed up with a flu the week after. And at the end of that time with the flu, my lymph node in my groin came up, and I remember saying to my partner, she's a nurse, I said, what do you think this is? And she said, oh, well, it's one of your lymph nodes. And being the typical male that I was, I'm like, oh yeah, she'll be right, she'll go away. And 4 weeks later, hadn't gone away, it was still there. And I'd poke it and prod it, didn't hurt, wasn't a bother. I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. And I had a bike ride, and I'm not sure if it was related or not, but my electric gear was on my bike, the battery ran out, and I ended up being stuck in the easiest gear and rode probably too far in that easiest gear. And I was working muscles that I hadn't usually worked for a while, and I'd upset, or I'd presume I upset my leg, and my calf had swollen quite a fair amount, and it was sore, it was quite sore to touch, and I didn't think much of it. I'm like, oh yeah, that'll be because of that, you know, it'll be fine. And I was kind of at that point where this lymph node is still there, and my partner's like, you should probably go get that checked out. So I did. I went to the GP, And he's like, all right, well, let's have a look. So in the doctor's surgery, like, drop my pants. He doesn't really look at the lymph node in my groin. Like, his eyes were drawn straight to my calf. He's like, what's going on with your calf? And on the inside of my calf muscle, I have a big lump here. And I said, oh, I don't know, like it's red and it's quite swollen, it's tender to touch. And he's touched it and he goes, what's that hard lump there? And I was like, oh, that's this lump that I've had in my leg for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And he's just kind of looking at it and he's in a little bit of disbelief and he's a little bit worried at the same time because my leg was quite red. And I'm like, but what about my lymph node? And he goes, I'm not worried about your lymph node, I'm worried about your calf. So he sent me to get an ultrasound. So during the ultrasound, they're doing their thing and they're like, yep, all your veins, all your arteries, they're good. They're working, good blood flow, no concerns there. But I asked them to ultrasound the lump. And I'd always thought that that lump was muscle. I'd mountain biking, lots of crashes, and I had sore legs before and had thought and been told I'd torn my calf muscle and a lump or the calf below had come through that. So that ultrasounded that. They didn't say anything during the ultrasound. They're just like, we'll give the results to the GP and they'll get in contact with you. Anyway, next business day, my GP calls me and goes, can you come in this afternoon? Well, I just want to discuss your ultrasound. I'm like, yep. Can it wait till tomorrow? And they're like, no, it needs to be now. So I've called my girlfriend Caroline. I'm like, hey, I got to go to the GP. They want to see me today. So I went to the GP and he said, look, your veins are all good, but this lump in your calf is not good. It's looking nasty, like a, he didn't even say sarcoma, he said muscle cancer. So I'm just stunned, deer in headlights, not knowing kind of what to do or say next. And he said, we need to send you to a specialist. We were on our way to get an MRI and she's on the phone trying to book an appointment as I'm driving, and I heard her mention sarcoma. I was like, sarcoma, I've never heard that before. And we stopped at some point and I Googled sarcoma and Google Images, and there was a picture of a guy's leg with this big lump in his leg, and I was just like dumbfounded looking at this picture going, that could be my leg. And at the time when I first noticed it, the partner that I was seeing back then, I'd mentioned to her, I'm like, what do you think this is? Like, do you think it could be a tumour or something like that? She just laughed and said, don't be stupid, like you don't get tumours in your leg. Okay, you do. And it's not fun. Like if I'd known what sarcoma was 8 years ago, probably wouldn't be in the situation that I ended up in now. So I can talk about it, and it would never prepare you for how it actually feels. And every time I went for a scan, it was more bad news. I remember the nurse practitioner calling me after a CT saying, look, it's not good news. And she said, you've got a lesion in your right hip And do you have any back pain? I said, yeah, on my left-hand side, just under my shoulder blade, it feels like I have a knot in the muscle, and it just, it's discomfort, I just can't kind of relieve that discomfort. And I've tried like trigger point and stretching, and she goes, yeah, it's because, you know, you've got something going on in your T7 vertebrae. She said, we're a little bit concerned about that because it's quite close to your spinal cord, which when they say we're concerned because it's close to your spinal cord, like all these like alarms and emotions are just flooding you. Got off the phone with her, and I was driving home and I was like, oh, I've had this sore neck for some time now, and it's like, I could feel like a lump in the back of my neck, and it felt like a big bit of knotty muscle. So I got home and I was telling Caroline about it, and then I thought, I wonder if it's related. And it was a Friday morning, and I remember being at work, like right in the middle of being busy, and the nurse called me and she said, what are you doing now? I said, oh, I'm at work. She goes, can you drop everything you've got? She said, I've got a CT scan booked for you over in Midland. Can you head over there now? And I said, oh, can we do it tomorrow, like on the weekend? I don't have work tomorrow. And she's like, sorry, it wasn't a question. You need to drop what you're doing and get to Midland. And you need to get there for the scan. And had a phone call from her in the afternoon. She said, yeah, there's something going on in your C1 and C2. It's close to the spinal cord as well. So, you know, when you're told these things, it's like every time I get a scan, there's more and more bad news. And then now I've got these spots that are close to my spinal cord. That's just, you know, they're like, we don't want you to fall over, we don't want you to crash your bike, you know, because you have a risk of being paralyzed from the waist down or paralyzed from the neck down, which, you know, when you physically feel like you can do your normal things, then it's a pretty hard blow. And then I realized that these niggling injuries that I had, that I was justifying, my hip had been sore because I'd lifted a toolbox up some stairs and I was walking at a funny angle, and I thought, oh, I just twinged it when I did that. And then the pain in my back was because I'd been hobbling because of my hip, so my back was out of line, and then my neck had started hurting because my back was sore, and that's kind of related. And I was like, oh, I just need to go to the chiropractor and get an adjustment. But it wasn't that. There was some nasty things going on in there, and to go from one day being a normal individual to the next finding out that your body's riddled something pretty nasty, alveolar soft part sarcoma. Doctor could have been talking Chinese to me for all as I was aware. I had no idea, it was just straight over my head. And he said it is rare. And I said, okay, so what do we go from here? He goes, I don't know, like it's pretty rare. He goes, I need to refer you to a medical oncologist, and they'll be able to kind of see where you go from there. After having that appointment with the medical oncologist, it was very polarizing when you're sitting across from a desk and he starts listing where the sarcoma is. It was a pretty big list, and he's sitting there going, this is so rare that we don't actually know the outcome. He goes, potentially it's incurable. We don't know kind of where or how the outcome is going to be. Your traditional treatments like chemo are ineffective. And I'm just like, I don't know, like how can you, the emotions that were running through my mind and I'm just like mind boggled that one day you're normal and the next a doctor's sitting across from you saying you've got cancer riddled through your body and it's incurable and your traditional treatments don't work. And then you like, where do you go from here? Like, this sarcoma that I have, alveolar soft part sarcoma, it's referred to as ASPS, is the rarest cancer you can get. Your sarcomas are about 1% of all cancer that is diagnosed, and ASPS is 0.1% of sarcomas diagnosed. So it's like a 1 in 10 million chance of getting this sarcoma. But thankfully, this drug in America had been approved for it and had been showing some pretty positive results. So optimistic that there was going to be a good outcome. But unfortunately, in Australia, the immunotherapy for this is not approved for this sarcoma because it's so rare. Thankfully, the drug is in Australia. If I'd had a specific lung cancer, then I'd be able to get this immunotherapy through Medicare, no problems. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And the doctor is saying, you've got a couple of options here. If the funds are there, we can get this immunotherapy drug, what they call off-label. And he initially is talking that it's going to be about 60 grand for this treatment. You walk out of that office and you've been hit with you've got an incurable disease, your traditional treatments don't work, and then you're potentially going to have to pay 60 grand to have something that might help. And I'd asked him, so these immunotherapy treatments, like what's the success rate? And he goes, we don't know. We don't know. He said it's kind of looking now that there's like a 40% success rate. I'm like, is that 40% that it's going to be cured, or 40% that I'm not going to die? He's like, I don't know. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one in Western Australia who's been diagnosed with it. So yeah, it's a huge kind of like shock to the system that you've got all these things. It's like, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do? And the worst part about it is just not knowing. You have these scans and you get drip fed this information, drip fed this bad news, bad news, bad news. and there's just so much uncertainty. You don't know if your future is going to be 6 months, 6 years, 20 years. You don't know. And it's pretty hard when you have to sit down with your partner and talk about that. What if I die? You know, then what? You know, it's pretty hard. It's a real hard thing to kind of deal with in those emotions. It's just, yeah, it's been, I wouldn't even I don't know the words to describe it really, because it's indescribable, and it'd be hard to explain how bad it is really, you know, like, yeah, not fun. Cycling is a huge passion of mine. I love it. It's my thing, really. So after going through the treatment, being told, having the plan, having the immunotherapy, so the doctor managed to get a deal with a drug company, but they gave me radiation as well at the start, and that's another huge out-of-pocket thing. And usually when someone gets radiation on a cancer or sarcoma site, it's one spot that they might do maybe 30 treatments on that. So you'd go Monday to Friday and they'll treat that spot. It's a quick process. It's usually from the time you turn up to the time you leave would be half an hour. For me, they wanted to radiate 5 spots. So I got the top of my spine, the neck done, middle of my back and lower back, and my lymph node and my hip. So they did all those, and they're like, we're gonna hit this hard and we're gonna hit it fast. So they gave me the maximum they possibly could over 12 sessions. Over that period of time, I lost, I think it was like 13 kilos. It was like just over 10% of my body weight, and I didn't have 10% of my body weight to lose essentially, and I felt like a frail old man really, and it was horrible. I would never wish that upon anyone. My doctor had said that I could ride my bike, just don't crash. And he said, and that's your road bike, like gravel bike and mountain bike, no goes, which is kick a man when he's down. So some time had gone past and I'd obviously got over the radiation, and the immunotherapy treatment had been doing its thing, and started off a little bit slow, but there was 2 steps forward and there was 1 step back. But about 6 months later, after some scans, some really positive results were coming back. A lot of the what they call activity in the lesion sites had been reducing, and some of the bone that they were concerned about had been healing. So Caroline and I, we have some friends who own a farm just out of town, and we were going there for the weekend just to kind of relax and have a good time. And I snuck my gravel bike into the caravan while Caroline wasn't looking, and when we were out there, I was like, I'm gonna go ride my gravel bike while I'm here. And I bought my full cycling kit and everything with me. And then I kind of thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Like, bugger it. I'm not even gonna bother putting my kit on. And gravel cycling, there's this real kind of thing, like the spirit of gravel, where it's takes away from the traditional road cycling stigma that there is around road cycling and makes gravel biking more kind of relaxed, and that, you know, there's no real rules, you can do whatever you kind of want. So I have these funny old school stubby like workwear shorts that Caroline had found for me in the op shop. So I had those on, and I did put my cycling shoes on and just had my t-shirt on, and like, oh, I'm not even going to put my cycling sunnies on, you know, and just put my helmet on and had my SafeStyles. I was like, I'm just going to rock these. This is going to piss a lot of people off, but I'm going to do it. And I just got on my bike, and the farm that our friends have, it's got all these kind of little bush tracks and bush roads, and they kind of zigzag and go all around the place. And I just went out and just got on my bike, and I'm like, yes, this is the first time riding my gravel bike since I'd qualified to go to World Champs, and I wasn't sure when I was going to be able to ride that bike, if I could ever ride that bike again. So being able to get back out on that bike and just, I reckon it's like one of the best days. I was just like, had this big grin, kind of just like riding around, didn't care about anything. It was like, it was bliss. And when I finished riding, a friend who owns the farm, he goes, how far did you go? I was like, I rode 16 Ks. And he just started laughing. He goes, the property's not that big. I'm like, I know, I just rode around. I was just like, followed this track, followed that track, rode around in circles, did figure eights. I was just having the best time of my life. Like, it was, yeah, loved it. So it was good to have all these bad things happen and then just have this kind of golden moment. It was amazing. I'm not going to say it's easy, like it is hard. There are days where I just want to stay in bed with the lights off and kind of not think about the world, but it's unproductive. You know, what good is that going to be? Caroline, my girlfriend, has been amazing, and basically if I didn't have her by my side through this, I might not have been so popular, but I have her there for the support, and I don't want to let her down. I want, you know, to do my best for her and for our future, for her boys and for my daughter. And it's been a real challenge for me, and I'm lucky for the support network that I have around me, and there are a lot of people out there who don't. And if I had 8 or 9 years ago got my leg checked out, then I might be in a more positive place right now. So I want to be positive and kind of get the word out and tell people about what sarcoma is, or cancer. People know what cancer is, but sarcoma as well, it's a lot of the time it is kind of, people think it's a sports injury, or they kind of brush it off as something else because that's kind of what it's disguised. Sarcoma is a cancer that is formed in your soft tissue and your bone. So whether it's your muscles, your ligaments, your tendons, your connective tissue, and your bones. So anything around that area, and it does get misdiagnosed as a sports injury, and a lot of time people don't realise they have it until they actually have an injury and they're in hospital, and while they're there they realise that they might, whatever their injury is because of the sarcoma. So I kind of want people to know what sarcoma is, and if you do have something that doesn't look or feel right, like especially men, like don't be that whole kind of blasé, oh she'll be right. Like I've been saying that for a long time, and it's not all right. And so I'm being positive that you can be dealt a shit card, and stage 4 cancer, your future's unknown, but hey, like you can live a normal life. I've been lucky, I've been very lucky that I can still come to work. Some may say that's strange, but I do enjoy working. If I had stayed at home, I definitely would have spiraled into a deep dark hole. Being busy has definitely helped with the positivity of it, and being negative doesn't help. It's unproductive, but being positive is productive. You can do a lot of positive, productive things when you are positive. Hence this, you know. And I don't want people to end up in I call it the situation that I'm in. And if telling people about this and making them aware, even down to the drug company that is providing me with the immunotherapy, they will be able to use the results from how things have been going with me to put forward a case to potentially make this drug available in Australia for others, you know. So being positive is the only way to go, really. And yeah, it's been good for me so far, so yep. So I was diagnosed late September 23, and now how far along are we now? 7-8 months-ish from there. It's been going well. Things have been trending pretty good. Every time I've had scans, they seem to be getting better and better results, which is really positive. And hopefully it keeps trending in that direction. And I don't know if I'll ever be free of it completely, but I'd like to think that at the very least, if it's manageable, I would be very happy if I, every third Wednesday, get my immunotherapy treatment for the rest of my life. If I could do that, and that meant that I had a normal kind of happy life, then I'm completely okay with that. Ideally, I'd like to be free of it. But the way things are going now, I think down the line, I have a goal and I haven't said it out loud too much to too many people. I did qualify for Gravel Worlds and I wanted to go race that, and that was taken away from me. Pretty sure the day of the actual race I was pretty buckled because of radiation. So it was pretty heartbreaking. But down in Nanup, where they held the qualifying race in 2026, the Gravel Worlds is going to be held there, so maybe that could be on the cards. Could be. Fingers crossed.
How do you balance being a tradie and a cyclist?
Yeah, it can be a tricky one for some, because tradies are generally the ones, when you're out on your road bike, they're hanging out the window, they're throwing something at you, which does happen a lot, or they're yelling the traditional, "Get off the road." And, you know, I wish that if someone's going to hang out of their car and yell at me, that they would think of something a little bit more original. But it is entertaining. When people find out that, you know, I wear Lycra on the weekends, you do cop a bit of flack, but, you know, I'm kind of at that vintage now, and I just don't care, and I just tell them, you know, like, have you ever worn Lycra on the weekend? Like, maybe you should give it a try. Like, it's a good one. It kind of makes them think a little bit, but you know, there are times where I tell them, like, why are you so bothered? Like, why are you bothered by someone out doing what they're enjoying? Like, are you not happy? And do you want to make them not happy because you're yelling at them? Like, we're out there having fun, and we're not really holding you up. You're in a car, you're a big steel box, you got an accelerator pedal. When you can pass us, you can accelerate back up to speed and get to wherever you're going 30 seconds slower. Like, it's not a problem. And now, you know, there are much bigger problems in the world. You know, you get told you've got an incurable disease, and no one can give you a clear indication if you're going to live, how long you're going to live for. And when someone is yelling out the window because you're going to hold them up, like, it's not an issue, really. You know, there are so many bigger issues in the world. They must have a pretty good life if all they're concerned about is a cyclist holding them up.